And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Payson Johnson
with a cinema review.
Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Cinemaster's Review. I'm your host, the Cinemaster Payson Johnson, and this week we are reviewing two awesome movies, Cocaine Bear, directed by Elizabeth Banks, and Emily, directed by Frances O'Connor. Guys, I'm not going to lie to you. When I was setting up this episode, I personally think this might be the most fun we are going to have with an episode so far, and that's mainly due to the guest today. He's one of the most energetic guys I know, one of the most, fun people to talk about movies just because of how weird his tastes can be. You know what? Let's not wait. Let's not dilly-dally. Let's just bring him in. He's the one, the only, Bill, the Philadelphia Carriola. Bill, how are you doing today?
Great. I can't wait to talk about Emily.
Oh, yes. Big fan of the big fan. What is your favorite Bronte? Who was your favorite Bronte sister, Bill?
I have no idea what you're fucking talking about. That sounds like a venereal disease.
That's absolutely no. When I was looking at the schedule of 2022 films, and I saw there was a movie called Cocaine Bear coming up, the first thought I had was, okay, I need Bill Carriola to be on this show.
Mm-hmm. Is it because I used to do cocaine?
I was going to say because you're a big fan of bears, but yeah. No,
I mean, they're godless killing machines. Yeah. So,
I mean, yeah. Bears are pretty cool. You know what? We're gonna jump right into our first review of the evening. I already evoked the name. It is Cocaine Bear, directed by Elizabeth Banks. This is a film about based on a true story. Keep that in mind, about a shipment of cocaine that was lost in the mountains, and doing so, a black bear gets into the supply, gets high, and wreaks havoc. Bill, I'm not gonna lie. Usually, I like to ask our guests something that's related to the movie, like if it's a franchise. What are your opinions on this franchise? If it's a director, what are your opinions on the director? This is a movie called Cocaine Bear. This is an original idea. You can't really go off too much about it. It's just, do you know what cocaine is? Do you know what bears are? It's really all that. Bill, what were your general thoughts on the movie?
Well, I remember when I saw the trailer, I was like, how did they grow a movie in a lab specifically for me personally? Because, first off, you got a movie with cocaine and Ray Liotta's in it. I'm like, well, I'm in immediately. And honestly, I knew what it was, and it is exactly what it needed to be. This movie is just, don't think about it too long, especially if you read what actually happened to that bear in real life. It makes for a pretty boring movie. Because, spoiler alert, he died. Because, of course, he did. That's what happens. So, but, yeah, honestly, this is actually just, it's funny. And it's nice that it breaks up the comedy with just a straight up well done monster movie. It's, honestly, I would get the feeling that Elizabeth Banks has probably done a bunch of this stuff before, just by how well it is crafted. And I love that they got a lot of good actors in it. Probably not a lot of big names, but O'Shea Jackson Jr. just continues to kill it in everything he does. Kerry Russell is perfectly suited for the role that she has. Ray Liotta's Ray Liotta. You pretty much got exactly what you signed up for. And yeah, it's a shame he delivers. But I think, honestly, standout performance for me was Isaiah Whitlock Jr. as Bob, the cop. Hilarious. Just the absolute, he is straight-faced in the middle of all this insanity. And the weird subplot he has that I won't spoil because it's hilarious. And then it gets super graphic when it needs to. And yeah, it's a fun time. But yeah, solidly made monster movie in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Full transparency for all my reviews. A lot of these, when I am doing my reviews, most of it is off the cuff. But I usually like to outline and write notes about everything I want to talk about. Had a little bit of difficulty with this one, trying to put down my thoughts, because I'll be honest, this movie is insane in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to pretend like it's anything other than a turn your brain off movie.
Yeah.
But if you are going into this movie knowing what it's going to be, it is a movie called Cocaine Bear, about a bear that gets high on cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
You are in for a super fun time.
Yeah.
Bill, you mentioned it earlier. Not only is this movie... this movie is definitely a comedy. Like, I think... You see the trailer, this movie is going for the laughs, but it also is evoking a lot of other really cool genres. You mentioned the horror aspect. I got a lot of, like, 80s, like, throwback stuff with this, with, like, the coming-of-age aspect to it, and you have a really cool, like, crime aspect. I think the way Elizabeth Banks balanced all these genres, she balanced it pretty dang well. What did you think about that, Bill?
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to balance a lot of those. Like, she's got 3 or 4 different tones happening at once, and it's pretty skillful. And the fact that this movie is, like, clocks in at just barely over 90 minutes, it is a lean film. There is no fat. It gets right to it. Kudos for actually including the real-life footage early in the film. And, maybe because it's me, opening with Jane, was a good touch. I also appreciate the fact that this movie takes place in the 80s, but it doesn't ham it up, overdo it, or hit you over the head with it. Like, whereas a lot of lesser things, or even to an extent like a Stranger Things, like, we get it, it's the 80s, shut up already. Like, I understand this now. But, it's kind of there for window dressing and not much else. So.
No, 100%. I often found myself forgetting what time period we are in, mainly because the majority of this movie does take place in the woods, where we are essentially off of civilization. But, like, minus Kerry Russell's incredible costume in this movie, just wearing a pink tracksuit throughout the movie, and she kills it in that costume. Yeah, like you said, there really aren't, like, a ton of references to the 80s. I want to touch on something you just said. Yeah, this movie clocks it at 90 minutes, and it goes by in the best way possible. Yep. I'll admit, minus the opening kill at the beginning, it might take a little bit longer than you would think to actually get to the main bear killings, but once it does, the movie is off to the races there. Like, I think it takes its time, maybe a little too much at the beginning, just setting up everything, and I think that is just essentially just a casualty of having all these characters in this movie, is that you do have to set up a lot before you start killing people. But yeah, once you get into the meat of this story, it is full throttle all the way to the end. Bill, what do you think about that?
I do mean, like, it's a bit of a lull in the first act to we got to put all the pieces in place first. And so, like, the first act is a little long, but not to the point where it, like, ruins any enjoyment, because I enjoy the people we're meeting. Yes. And even though, like, you could tell some of them were just set up to be fodder for, like, whatever the hell is going to happen. And I also got to admit, what's his name? Han Solo. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Surprisingly really good in this. He really is. Like, I am a Solo apologist. I say that movie is not that bad. But, like, he really cranks up the charm in this film. Like, I'm like, I'm kind of pulling for this guy. He's kind of great. Because he's just, without getting into his story too much. And then every time we cut to him and OJ Jackson, I need a buddy cop film with those two. Because they were fantastic together. Like, every minute they're on screen, it's just well worthwhile.
Yeah, as a Hail Caesar apologist, I've always been someone that roots for Alden Ehrenreich through every project he does. And honestly, of all the characters and all the storylines in this movie, the relationship between Ehrenreich and O'Shea Jackson Jr. was my favorite of the movie. To give some context, Alden Ehrenreich plays a son of a drug dealer whose wife previously died, so he's very, very sad. And O'Shea Jackson Jr. is essentially the number one guy of this drug dealer, and that is why they are in the mountains to try and get the cocaine. And their dynamic is so funny because, like, even though Ehrenreich's, like, mopiness, you can see annoys O'Shea Jackson Jr., they do still have a friendship throughout the entire movie where, like, they're never going to quite turn their backs on each other, even though they drive each other up the wall. Bill, what was your favorite relationship or just storyline in this movie?
I honestly, outside of those two, it's the cop with the dog. It's so funny. It really is. It's just like, and it's like kind of just put in matter of factly, but it's just like I'm kind of glad we get to it. So I will say, spoiler alert: the dog's fine. So no dog was harmed, just fucking people. Yeah, no, that was definitely my favorite. I don't know why. I'm like, every time it came out, I'm like, this dude is just hilarious. And I don't know, like, because he is like transported completely from a different film in the best way possible. So yeah, no, and that was definitely kudos for me. So
no, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. kills it in that role. I think he adds a lot of he adds a weird sense of class, in my opinion, to the movie. Like, Ray Liotta is definitely like the most famous actor in this movie. I would not say he adds class to this movie. Rest in peace, Ray Liotta. He is playing like a scumbum drug dealer, and like he is. I'll be honest. He was there for the paycheck, and honestly, good for him. But yeah, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. is great in this movie. If I'm being honest, the one storyline that I think didn't quite work out for me was the storyline with the two kids, specifically when they're just by themselves. And it's not that I didn't like the story. I just think 50% of the actors were good, in my opinion. I think Brooklyn Prince, the girl who plays the daughter to Kerry Russell's character, is wonderful. I've loved her since I saw her in the Florida Project. She has always been someone that I think is going to be a rising star one day. But I think the kid that plays her friend, Christian Covery, just didn't quite do it for me. It's always a risk when you do get child actors, and I think this you can definitely feel like this was a kid that was just sort of reading his lines and didn't quite know what to do. I never want to like be too mean to a child actor. Like, go after the filmmakers for making them do this stuff, but like, yeah, he was the one guy that just didn't quite do it for me. Did this storyline work for you, and were there any storylines that didn't quite work for you?
Honestly, that kind of did. I did find the kick. Also, the fact that he was wearing a wrestling belt for me as a fan, I'm like, that's a nice touch, just because that's just like a dumb thing to do. And I'm like, yeah, that's nice. I think it was the park ranger and her boyfriend. I think that was kind of a little like, I think it's like half a joke that didn't quite. That probably was something that got. There's probably more to it that got edited out.
Yeah, it didn't really go anywhere. Like,
it was all set up for him to be like a bear expert, and then run the joke of like, well, no, of course a bear can do these things. So yeah, but I'm like, I don't really care. And where oof, man, they get taken care of. It's fine.
Other performances in this movie. You have a great character actor, Margot Martindale. I feel like you're legally required to say character actor Margot Martindale, because whenever she shows up in a movie, I really, really like her as like this like overbearing sheriff that takes her job really, really seriously. And another actor I want to call out, Christopher Hibju from Game of Thrones. He was the guy that played Tormund in Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Unrecognizable in this movie, and he is so funny.
And he's in it for like 5 minutes tops and maximizes every minute of it.
5 minutes and just completely steals every single scene he's in. What did you think of both those performances, Bill?
Margot Martindale's good. I think she just got the shit storyline, personally for me, and that is just my own taste. The other guy's hilarious. Also, the three gang members, the one guy who I can't remember, kudos, he is absolutely hilarious. So, and the whole dynamic of him getting stuck with Elderbright and like O'Shea is just so funny.
There is a point in this movie where three gang members essentially try to attack O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character, and what happens to them is very, very funny.
Yeah.
When you're making a movie called Cocaine Bear and you know it's going to be a horror comedy, I think one of the number one things you're wishing for is, I want this movie to be brutal and I want it to have some really good kills. And in my opinion, this movie absolutely delivered. I think my favorite moment was probably the one that was teased in the trailer with the two paramedics, but there are several other great, great moments. Bill, what did you think about the brutality of this movie?
That scene, the paramedic scene, is one of the most. It's up there with some of the gnarliest things I've seen in quite some time. I don't want to give away too much, but they did not show you hardly anything. Also, the cabin where they're at the lodge, of just the shock value of that whole scene, and the big main one at the end was pretty horrific. So, yeah. But nothing beats that ambulance scene. That is like, if you'd have told me their whole budget went to that, that was money well spent.
No, yeah. I want to say the budget in this movie was around 35 million, and honestly, I think it paid off pretty dang well. This bear is clearly CGI. As someone who has seen Nope, it obviously should be CGI because we don't need to be working with real animals in today's cinema world. And it never really took me out of the movie. I don't really know how it could take me out of the movie unless it just looks horrifically bad, which I don't think it did. It really just added to the cartoonish element of this movie. And yeah, I just thought it was a ton of fun. And like you said, that finale at the end, that's the one part I'm not going to spoil, but I love how it ends. I love how they have every single character that is still alive at that point convene, and their whole storylines connect. And in my opinion, I think every character had a pretty satisfying conclusion to what we wanted going into the finale at that point.
Yeah. And I will say, the joke of the bear just doing a line off a leg he just ripped off. A+.
No, 100%.
A+ to that.
Every scene where they are baiting the bear away by just tossing cocaine just made me laugh every single time.
Man, so good.
Yeah, just other things that make me laugh. I'm not going to spoil this, but one of my favorite opening title cards ever in terms of
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
It's on the bear, and then boom. The entire theater was laughing for me. And I had the privilege of watching this in a completely packed house, and the whole audience was into this movie. And I don't think that I usually don't like to think that affects my score, but it definitely makes the experience more fun to see a movie like this with
I think it's on par with the opening quote from Step Brothers.
Yes.
As far as a great, hey, here's the setup, and you're like, okay, I know the kind of movie I'm in for now. This is good stuff.
100%. Yeah, the more I think about this movie, the more I just think it's just it's a fun time. It's stupid. Yeah. It's insane. There are some issues I did have with the movie. It does have the best issue that I think you can have with a short movie, where during the finale, I was just man, I want this to keep going. I just want this to keep going. But I think it is good that the movie doesn't overstay its welcome.
It does not, no. And it's a movie that kind of knows what it is going into it. It's not a Jacques Tati masterpiece. This is exactly what you think it's going to be, and I think it honestly delivers in that. It's just enjoyable, it's entertaining, and you don't have to think about it too deep because it's not trying to be that. This is just good old-fashioned popcorn fare, and I'm here for it. So,
no, yeah. I was reading an article. I forget which website was publishing, but I think they were just talking about the rise of recent horror when you think of stuff like Barbarian or Smile or even this year's Megan, where I think because these movies are a little cheaper to make, and there is an audience that will always go and see these movies because horror just always tends to have a dedicated audience, we're going to slowly start to see more of those. And if they are able to keep the quality of some of these, I am all for it. I'm sure we're going to get some really bad ones, and we'll definitely talk about those here.
Yeah.
But like, I'm all here for original horror.
No, I mean, there's a reason why Blumhouse is like cranking it out the way it is. It hits more often than it doesn't. So yeah, because they know what they're doing. It's like, hey, yeah, I'm not saying this is a Blumhouse movie, but I'm just saying as the model of like, hey, it doesn't need to be super expensive, but you just got to know how to do it right. And yeah, and this definitely fits into that vein. And it's nice to live in a horror renaissance. So I'm here for it. I'm thrilled.
No, yeah, I'm very happy to be living in a horror renaissance. I'm just here happy to be living in a hopeful theatrical renaissance, because if they bring more people to theaters, that's always a high for me. So, Bill, going into scoring, we rate our movies on a scale from 0 to 10 videotapes. 0 is just it is a painful experience. Like, you never want to see this again. It shouldn't have been made. And 10 videotapes is like a life-changing experience. It's going to be one that is going to be staying with you for such a long time. On a scale from 0 to 10, what would you give it?
I was prepared to give it like maybe a 6, 7, but remembering that doing the line off of the dead guy's leg, 8 is for me. It's one of those ones. I'll go back to this eventually, and I will enjoy it every time. Like it's just fun, and I enjoy fun. So.
No, yeah, I enjoy fun as well. I'm always someone that likes to champion the 5-star, 3-star movies, and I think this is one of those movies. It's not shooting for a ton, but I think for what it is shooting for, I think it pretty much nails everything. I'm going to give it 7.5 videotapes out of 10. I think this is just a real good time, and I would recommend, if you are going to go see this movie, see it in the theater with as much people as you can, and just have a good fun time.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, Bill, thank you so much for joining me. We're gonna leave questions and comments open just for a little while. I'm just gonna ask you some questions, Bill. You say this alluded to some like cool monster movies. Do you have like a personal like couple favorite monster movies that you just like to maybe recommend to the audience?
Geez. Let me think about that one for a minute.
Absolutely.
Well, obviously, The Thing is like one of the best monster movies ever made. Yeah, it's it's my favorite John Carpenter movie. If you need one where it's like stupid and you don't need to think about it, Leviathan from the 80s with Peter Weller is solidly fun, just cheese time. I enjoy it. It's like The Thing, but cheap and not as good, but it's got a fun cast. What was another good one? Like Mimic, I think is actually a really good one.
Is that the Guillermo del Toro one?
Yeah, I think that's like criminally underrated. It is a very good time. So I'm trying to think now. I mean, you can never go wrong with a Godzilla movie, almost ever, except for whatever the hell Roland Emmerich did. But whatever, that's fine. So that's always fun. So yeah, what about you? Any monster movies you're like, oh, that's a good one?
Yeah, I know some people may roll their eyes when I call them monsters, but for the first time yesterday, I watched 28 Days Later for the first time.
Okay.
That movie is great. Like, I just think that movie, I know it's sort of like revolutionized like the fast zombies before Zack Snyder kind of ruined it, in my opinion. Yeah. But then, yeah, I just think the way how Danny Boyle just directs that movie with such visceral energy, I think I really appreciate. I also love An American Werewolf in London. Like it has practical effects that still hold up to this day. Like that transformation scene is incredible as far as I'm concerned.
Pumpkinhead. There you go. That's a fun good time.
I've been meaning to watch that one. I've heard weirdly a ton of fun things about that.
Yeah. Now the rest of the films in that series, differing quality, but Pumpkinhead, the first one, it's actually pretty great.
Nice.
It was you could definitely tell this was like someone's passion project going into like it had a little more going on than like what was going on in other like 80s horror where it's like just fucking kill somebody, I don't care. So where this guy kind of put a little bit into it, and you could tell.
No, 100%, Bill. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight on Cinemaster's Review. I definitely plan on having you in the future. Is there anything you want to plug before you head off for the night?
PLU coming soon. The roster sign up sheet still active till tomorrow.
Yes, TLU, in case anyone doesn't know, is the new Trivia League starting up here on the Video Store, hosted by Bill Carriola and John Marr. Really awesome having you guys come to the Video Store family. It's a really fun time, and it's a great team we are starting to form.
It's going to be a hoot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. This has been a ton of fun talking about this movie.
Yep.
Have a great night.
You too.
All right. Thanks once again, Bill. We're gonna give you guys just maybe 30-second break before we start our next movie. But yeah, I think this movie was just a ton of fun. And if you guys have the opportunity to see it, like I said, go see it in the theaters. It's gonna hit on cable or on demand, but it's gonna help. It's gonna be helped out a lot by just having a packed audience, just laughing and just reacting to every little thing that happens in this movie. But yeah, I think we're going to move on to our second movie of the night. A little less talked about, but I think I'm very happy I still saw it. It's a movie called Emily. This is a biopic on the life of famed author Emily Bronte, directed by Frances O'Connor. Essentially what the movie is about, it follows Emily Bronte, who is on her deathbed. Emily Bronte, probably most famous for writing Wuthering Heights, and is about her sister Charlotte essentially asking her what was the inspiration behind her writing this book. And the entire movie is told through flashback as you learn more and more about what made Emily Bronte who she was. Going into this movie, I actually, when I was trying to find a movie to review this week, there wasn't really like a huge second movie that was coming out, or at least a super big one, because I'll be honest, I had seen some trailers for this movie, but I hadn't seen a ton of marketing. So I just sort of thought going in, I was going to get a middle of the road, period piece. Nothing too special, nothing too memorable. I ended up really, really liking this movie, and I think it just had a ton of elements that just really, really worked in the movie's favor. And I think one of the major elements of the movie that works is Emmy Mackey as the lead role of Emily Bronte. Emma Mackey, probably most famous for her time. I actually haven't watched the show, but the British TV show Sex Education, and I thought she was the best part of the Death in the Nile remake that came out last year. I think that movie's good, not great, but I think she is really, really good. But yeah, I think she just brought the character of the person of Emily Bronte to life. When you hear about her, you always hear she was sort of like the outsider of her family. And Emma Mackey plays all the subtleties really, really well there. You can see as she was constantly bullied by members of her family, such as Anne, and a little bit with Charlotte. And you can see how it bothered her to a point, but she never really let it get her down because she was okay being the unordinary person. And I think the direction of this movie really helps that out. The movie has a really cool, gothic look to it. I love how everything feels a little overcast and everything feels a little shaded, and it adds a sort of energy to it that I think is necessary to tell a story like this, to get into the soul of the character, to really feel the darkness of someone that did eventually write something like Wuthering Heights. Even though Wuthering Heights is a romance novel, it definitely has a lot of sadness to it, and you can see in the soul of Emily Bronte how that affected her. I really liked the relationship between Emily Bronte and her sisters, and I also really loved the chemistry between Emma Mackey and Oliver Jackson Cohen, who plays a character named William Waitman. He is essentially someone that comes to teach the family eventually in the movie, to teach the three sisters, because their father obviously wants them to become educated. And the scenes that William and Emily have really help add a sense of tenderness to this movie. And as they slowly begin to fall in love, and their relationship affects Emily more and more as the movie goes on, you become more invested because Emma Mackey and Oliver Jackson Cohen are so good in these two roles. There are a lot of really, really good scenes. I think there's this one really fun scene where all three sisters are playing this game where they put on a mask and they pretend to be a character. And Emily is at one point asked to do this, and she puts on the mask and she pretends to be their dead mom. and you see how much this disturbs her sisters. You can see how because of her actions, because she does this, because she's so interested in the things that no one else are interested in, why that would scare other people off, and why she will always feel like an outcast to her family. And I think those scenes are really, really well done. I think the direction can sometimes get a little bit in the way of the movie. Like, I do think it can get a little too artsy at points. Like, I think that's like the line, and there are a couple other points where I think it just sort of surpasses it a little. But I think for the majority of the time, I think the gothic nature of this movie really, really helps it out. If I could say one major downside of this movie, I do think it's a tad too long. It's just over 2 hours, and at one point you are just sort of going back and forth between Emily and William as their relationship sort of starts to cause mishaps, and they have arguments, and they have they start to fall apart a little, which is completely fine and part of the story. But there comes a point where you know essentially what's going to happen, and you are essentially just asking the movie, come on, let's pick up the pace a little. This is just for me. Maybe some people, it won't bother people too much. And honestly, it didn't bother me like a ton, but I think you could probably shave about 15, 20 minutes off this movie, have it come in at like a nice, clean hour 50. And I think you just have a slightly better movie. The cinematography of this film is beautiful. I love the way it shoots England. And I also love the score. It has a really great orchestral score with all the violins and cellos and stringed instruments you could want. It really just creates like an ominous feeling that someone like Emily Bronte felt. And you can see the way that she affected not only the people around her, but the people that would eventually read her writing. It's really, really well done. I think this movie has a really great respect for the character of Emily Bronte. I can think of a few other biopics recently that just sometimes just don't feel like they respect the person. I think of Blonde, which in my opinion is a horrible movie. I get some people like it, but I just think Andrew Dominic had a weird hatred for Marilyn Monroe and just never wanted to show her in a positive light or show the humanity of her. I think this movie does a really, really good job of doing that. But yeah, if you are someone that is looking for a really good character study with a pretty decent romance in it, I think you're going to really, really like this movie. If I were to... real quick, just one last note. I think the ending is... I can see what the filmmaker was going for. I can see what Francis O'Connor was going for, but it is a bit of a non-ending where it just sort of comes out of nowhere, and I think that's going to leave some people split a little. I think I may have landed a little bit more on the negative side of the ending, but maybe it'll work for you. It's not like it necessarily comes out of nowhere. It just doesn't quite wrap up certain things as well as you may like. But yeah, if I were to rate this movie, I would give it, honestly, I'm giving it the highest score we've given so far. I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 videotapes. I think this is a great, great movie. There are some qualms I had with it, but I really like seeing smaller movies like this in the theater, and I would recommend, if you have the time, go see it. Maybe try to go see it in the matinee, but it's not necessarily a movie that would be lost on you if you watched it at home. But I think with the cinematography and with the score, and I think just the quality of the movie alone, I would recommend seeing this one in the theaters. And I think you're going to have a really, really good time just because I think this movie is that good. It's interesting. I believe this movie actually premiered at TIFF last year and just didn't quite make the Oscar conversation, which is why it was delayed till February. But I think this movie could have picked up maybe a few technicals, in my opinion. But yeah, that's the review for Emily this week. I'm just going to leave the comments up just for a little while longer if anyone wants to talk about anything movie-related, anything just in general. Did anyone watch the SAG Awards or the PGA Awards? I'll be honest, Everything Everywhere All at Once has been my favorite movie going this of 2022. But going into award season, I was a little skeptical to see if it would actually pick up steam. And not pick up steam, but carry over the steam, because it's so weird. I don't think we've ever had a Best Picture winner like this, so I thought, okay, some movie is going to beat it. It's going to be something like The Fabelmans, or it looked like it was going to be Top Gun Maverick at one point, which are two movies I love, but I just thought it would be so cool if Everything Everywhere All at Once won, and seeing how it won the PGA award, which is oftentimes such a good precursor to the Best Picture winner, and seeing how it picked up 4 awards at the SAG Awards. Guys, it's starting to look more and more realistic that Everything Everywhere All at Once could win Best Picture, and I would be all for it. It would be embarrassingly high on my Best Picture ranking. I think I've seen probably close to around 50 Best Picture winners at this point of the 93, and yeah, this would be very, very high. But yeah, I think we're just about done with today's episode. Thank you all for watching this. If you watched it live, if you did watch it on the playback, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the video store. They do so many incredible movie stuff. You can watch Filmography with Caleb Boatman and Caleb Coho. You can watch the set list with Brooklyn Vale and Andrew Barr if you're into music. Of course, Late Shift with Kelly and Mike every other Friday. It's such a fun show. Follow me on Letterboxd. I don't plug that enough, but I should. Follow me on Letterboxd at _Cinemaster, CINEMASTER. You can always just see my movie opinions. I don't make my movie reviews for new movies on there super long, but if you ever just want to see my initial thoughts on new releases or just movies I watch in general, I watch a ton of stuff, and you can always just see what I'm watching. It's Letterboxd, the best app for people that love movies, and I couldn't recommend it to anyone enough. But yeah, I think that just about does it tonight. Once again, thank you all for watching. I will see you next week. I should probably talk about the movies that I'm reviewing next week. I will be reviewing Creed 3 and Operation Fortune. I just about have a guest locked down for Creed 3. Don't quite have it confirmed, so I'm not going to make an announcement, but join me next week to talk about those movies. And as for everything else, everyone, have a great night, and see you all at the movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Yeah, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.